Hi guys, and welcome to Money Honeys. My name is MelissaJoyce, and if you have not joined me before, welcome. And if you have joined me before, thanks so much for coming back. Usually at this point in a video, I would say if you had not watched the previous videos up to this point, then I'd suggest you go back to the start of the Money Honeys playlist and watch from there. But this one is a little bit of a standalone video because today we're going to be talking about net worth, what it is, how you calculate it, some ideas around maybe where you should be with your net worth, and how to use it as a tool to measure progress in your financial goals. So if you are just curious about net worth, you can just watch this one video. If you want to see where this fits in the series, you can go back to the start of the Money Honeys video playlist and watch through from there. If you have been watching through, you will know that this video is coming in the middle of us talking about paying off our consumer debts. While this is not directly related to paying off consumer debt, it's a good thing to talk about at this point, because if you are in a long process of paying off a lot of debt, it can feel like you're not really making any headway, and it can be a little rough to measure progress and really see what you're doing. And net worth is a way to measure financial progress. So let's talk about net worth. I feel like at the beginning here, I should say that I am talking about net financial worth. That probably goes without saying, but when you talk about somebody's net worth, there are so many more things that are as important, more important than money. So, you know, if we say that somebody has a net worth of $1 million and somebody else has a net worth of, you know, $20,000, but that person who has a net worth of $20,000 has spent their life helping the community, giving back to people around them, being generous and charitable, you know, the person with $1 million isn't worth more as a person than the person with, you know, less money. So when I say net worth in this video, what I really mean is net financial worth, but just know that this doesn't say whether you are a good or bad person and what your value is as a human. It is just a term in the financial world to measure where you are. And the thing about net worth is that it shows you making progress, whether you are building up savings or paying down debt, which is why it's good to talk about at this point. So what is net worth? Well, net worth is basically all of your assets added up together minus all of your liabilities added up together. That's as simple as it is right there. Another way to think about it is you take everything that you own and take away from that everything that you owe. So basically, if you sold everything that you had in life, if you cashed out your investments, your bank account, if you sold your house, if you sold your car, how much would that all add up to after you had also paid off all of your debts? And that will show how much your net worth is. So what I will do is put down below a list of all of the assets that you should consider when you are adding up the asset column of net worth. And really, these are things like cash you have on hand, your checking account, your savings account, your investments, your retirement accounts. It also counts things like your the current value of your pension, which can be a little bit hard to figure out, but we try to factor some of that in there. It is how much your home is worth, just overall total, how much it is worth, how much your car is worth. When we start getting into cars and other possessions, it starts to get a little harder to know. So for something like your bank accounts, your investments, things like that, it's very easy to go in and see like an exact monetary amount that those are. And that is, you know, your asset that's there. When you start to get into your house, you're looking at, okay, you know, what are other houses worth in my area? It's a little bit more of a guess because, you know, it might be that you are in an area where homes are worth, you know, $300,000, but your home is a little bit nicer, but, you know, certain parts of it are outdated, but you have an extra bedroom. So you just want to make your best guess. And what you're going to do is, you know, update that guess every now and then. Maybe once a year you go back and see whether real estate has gone up in your area, what things are selling for. But that is sort of a best guess kind of thing. When you start to get into things like cars, cars depreciate really quickly. What I usually tend to do is go to something like autotrader.ca and put in my model of car with the amount of mileage that I have on it and the year that it is to see how much it's worth. And I think my car is worth like $4,000 or $5,000. It's really not very much. I drive an older car. And then you start getting into things like jewelry, possessions in your home. Unless you have some really valuable possessions like that, I would give a lot of the stuff a pass in putting into your net worth, because people always think that their possessions are more valuable than they are. So you may have bought that engagement ring and it cost, you know, $5,000 or $10,000. And then when you actually go and sell it to a jeweler, if maybe the marriage doesn't work out, you're gonna find it's worth like 1/10 of that amount. Things that you bought that you thought were really good, clothing, furniture, appliances, if you actually try to sell those things like at garage sales or on, you know, Kijiji or something like that, you're gonna get pennies on the dollar of what you actually spent on it. I will tell you, as somebody who moved from a 3-bedroom home into a 1-bedroom condo, I had the garage sales, you know, you make a couple $100 out of that. At the end of the day, what I had to do was actually hire a 1-800-GOT-JUNK truck to come to my house to take away all the stuff that I had spent hundreds and thousands of dollars on that I didn't want anymore. And not only did I not get any money back for that, I had to pay like $600 for them to come and take it away. So when you're adding up your assets, the point of all this is, yes, put in the things that are, you know, your accounts, your investments, your RRSPs, your IRAs, all of those kinds of things. Yes, include your home, include cars, include boats, include cottages, include things like that. But when you start getting into like the possessions in your home, maybe don't include those in your net worth unless you have some stuff that you know is really valuable on resale, like maybe art that you know the actual value of if you were to turn around and sell it. So that's all the assets, and I will put a more exhaustive list of that down below. So if you are doing this calculation, you can add all of this up and figure out what all of your assets are. And then on the other side of the calculation, you need to figure out everything that you owe. So whether that is your mortgage, your car loans, home income lines of credit, credit cards, student loans, you know, we've gone all through all this before. Any overdraft that you have in your accounts, any like buy now, pay later. We've discussed a lot of these kinds of debts and things owing before, and I will again put an exhaustive list of that down below. So what you're gonna do is just go through and add up everything that you owe to somebody else. And you are going to then take the amount from your assets, take away the amount from your liabilities, and the amount that is left is your net worth. So the reason that I'm talking about this at this point in the process is you can see there are 2 ways to increase your net worth. One is to increase your assets, so whether that's putting money into retirement accounts, whether that is just saving money up in a savings account, all of those things are going to increase your net worth. But the other way to increase your net worth is to decrease your liabilities and have less of an amount that you are taking away from your assets. So when you're in the point of paying off debt, it can feel like you're not getting anywhere because that asset column is probably staying pretty solid. Like you probably aren't increasing it a lot if you're really focused on paying off debt. But for every, you know, $100, $1,000, $10,000 you pay off of your debt, you're increasing your net worth by that amount. This next part, I really debated about whether to put this into this video or not, but I feel like it's a question that a lot of people have. Because whenever you are measuring something, people always want to know, am I where I should be? Am I in a good place? Am I not? What should my net worth be at the age that I am now? And I think this is a place that we should stop and say the actual answer to that is really going to vary from person to person. And you shouldn't really be comparing yourself to other people. You should just be looking at doing better than you did before. There is a saying that the only person that you should try to be better than is yourself or yourself from yesterday. And I think that is especially true with net worth because everybody comes from different circumstances. Everybody had different starts in life. Everybody has so many variables that make their life completely different from anybody else that it's not going to be helpful for you to look at somebody else and say, we're the same age, we should have the same net worth. And it's like, well, no, like, Did you have parents that paid for your university? Does that person have a family with 4 kids? Are you working in the nonprofit industry where you make less money, but you feel really good about the kind of work that you are doing and feel like you're making a difference? You know, does that person make huge gifts to charity? Did somebody else get an inheritance and, you know, that was money that just happened to come to them? So I really do believe that the only person you should be trying to be better than is yourself from yesterday. What I generally have done for the last 4 or 5 years or so is challenged myself to try to increase my net worth by 10% every year. Some years that's been easier than other years, but every year, if I reach that 10%, it means the next year that 10% is a little bit higher. I'm not comparing myself to anybody else. I'm comparing my net worth to where I was last year. And for me, that's the kind of progress I want to make, not to look around at my peers and say, I want to have more, you know, money than you do. No, I want to live the life that I want to have, and I want to increase my net worth at a rate that makes sense for me. But all of that being said is, if you're still looking for that information, you can go out and Google it. So I will tell you about 2 different calculations that I've seen that talk about what your net worth should be based on your age and current income. The first one that I have is from the author of a book called The Millionaire Next Door. In that book, he put in a calculation of net worth, and the calculation is this: multiply your age times your realized pre-tax annual household income from all sources except inheritance, and divide it by 10. This less any inherited wealth is what your net worth should be. So that sounds fairly complicated. What I thought I would do is show you that calculation based on somebody my age, which is 38, and then doing a assumed pre-tax income of $60,000. So with this calculation, we are multiplying your age, in which we are saying we're taking a 38-year-old, and we are multiplying that by our realized pre-tax annual household income. So I am saying this is somebody making $60,000 per year, gross income or pre-tax income. So we're going to multiply 38 by 60,000, which gives us 2.28 million, and then we are going to take that amount and divide it by 10. And so if we do that, we have 228,000 as a net worth. Now, the issue with this is a number of things, like all kinds of things. So for example, this is assuming that you have been making that income for a while, and that's not going to be true if you are quite young, because you probably have not been making money for a number of years if you just started a job. It also assumes that your income is pretty steady, where you might be somebody who is in a job making 30 or 40,000 per year, and just this year you started making 60,000, and then this is going to show a higher net income that you should have than you really would be able to have with the income track record. It also doesn't account for family size or anything like that. But that is a very simple calculation. Somebody from a website called The Simple Dollar, and I will link both of these, or I will link this website down below, looked at some of the deficiencies in that net worth calculation and came up with their own. And this is going to sound complicated, but I will walk you through this again in a moment. So The Simple Dollar's net worth calculation is that you take the average of your last 10 years of annual income, you minus $15,000 plus an additional $5,000 for every person in your household, including you. You multiply that by your age and divide it by 8. So it's doing a few things here. It's first of all by averaging your last 10 years of annual income. It is acknowledging that you could have had years with no income, you could have had a bump in income, and this is going to take that into account. For the $15,000 plus an additional $5,000 for each person in your household, it's taking into account that if you have a family of like 10, you're going to not have as much saved, most likely, as somebody who is single. To illustrate this calculation, I am again going to assume somebody who is 38 years old, and I have given them a list of incomes they have made for the last 10 years. You can see here that I have given them $60,000 for the last 3 years. I'm sort of assuming that they've gotten into a job where the pay is steady. But then there was a job change prior to that. So they moved into this job from somewhere they were making $50,000 per year. And perhaps that was somewhere for the 4 years before that, they had been getting a minor raise each year of $1,000. What I have done with the $20,000 the year before that and the $40,000 the year before that is saying maybe they were in a job where they were making 40, they worked halfway through that next year and then were laid off, so they only made 20,000 in the following year. So to get the average of all of the last 10 years of income, we are going to add up all 10 of those numbers and then divide them by 10. So on average, the person in this example has made $48,000 annually over the last 10 years. For this example as well, we are going to assume that there are 2 people in this household. So we're going to take that $48,000 and we are going to take away from it $25,000, which is $15,000 plus an additional $5,000 for every person in the household, including you. So $5,000 for the person in the example and $5,000 for their spouse in this example, which equals $25,000. So let's do that calculation. So we are now at $23,000 and we are going to take that number, multiply it by the age, which in our example is 38, and then we are going to divide that by 8. So in this example, we expect the person's actual net worth to be $109,250. So that is less than half of our previous example. So you can see that the measures out there vary pretty widely on where the expectation is of what your net worth is going to be at different points in your life. So all of these things are why net worth is a good measure of how you are doing compared to how you were doing a month ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, but it's very personal, so not a comparison to other people. There's a couple other things I want to mention while we talk about net worth, because if you're somebody who pokes around reading articles about net worth and retirement, things like that, you may have come across some articles that are a little discouraging about how much money you need or what your net worth should be when you retire. And sometimes you see the number thrown around a lot that you should have a net worth of $1 million by the time you retire. And there's 2 things that are a little iffy about that. First of all, net worth does not measure, as we just learned, cash in the bank. So you could be somebody who has a net worth of $1 million and it means that you have $1 million in the bank, but you rent a home. Or you could be somebody who bought a house 40 years ago for, $100,000 that is now worth $1 million and you have no cash in the bank, but $1 million home. Those 2 people are going to be in very different situations at retirement. But the other point is that if you tell somebody they need $1 million to be okay at retirement and they are in their 30s or 40s and don't have much saved up yet, that's not encouraging. That is incredibly discouraging, because if anything, you're going to have people look at that and say, there is no way I'm going to have $1 million. Why bother saving at all? Or I'm not going to get there and I shouldn't even start until I have, a higher income or more money available. And I don't want people to be put off by those numbers, because maybe you won't have $1 million, but if you actually start saving towards it, you're going to have more than if you didn't. And I think when we start throwing around these huge net worth numbers, it just really puts some people off altogether. The other thing I want to mention about net worth is it can be a good tool sometimes to put jealousy at bay. Because the thing is that you don't know anybody else's net worth and you can't tell by looking at someone. So I'm going to use myself as an example here, is that there are things in my life that are meaningful to me and things that aren't. I don't care about flashy cars. I mean, I mentioned my car is a cheap car that is now 8 years old. It looks it. Like, you see me driving around that car and it's not a nice car. You don't think anything of it, but it gets me around and I don't care about flashy cars. I don't care about clothing or nice shoes. I mean, if I could live my life in jeans and a t-shirt and a hoodie and sneakers, I would be a happy, happy girl. I don't care about jewelry. You will probably never see me wearing necklaces or rings or jewelry. It's not really my thing. And yeah, I have like a nice little place that I rent here, and I like the area of town that I'm in. But to look at me, you might make a very different assumption about how I'm doing financially than I actually am, because the reality is I do okay. When you add up my assets and my liabilities columns, there's nothing in my liabilities column. So a lot of people don't see that and they make assumptions based on it. On the flip side is, you know, I have some friends and I see some people where they have big houses in, you know, the suburbs. They have really nice brand new cars. They go on shopping trips. They have all kinds of material things. They have like hot tubs and, you know, go on vacations that you see the pictures of on Facebook all the time. And the assumption that you make is like, wow, they're doing really well and I wish I had all of that. And then it could be that they are doing incredibly well and I don't wish badly on anybody. But on the flip side, I know from some conversations that I have some people where that is what their life looks like, that the reality is that they are living paycheck to paycheck and are very stressed about, you know, where the next mortgage payment is going to come from. There is what you see and then there is reality. And because net worth is something where you tend to see people's assets in a lot of cases, but not their liabilities, you really can make assumptions about how well somebody is doing. So what I want you to keep in mind, if you feel discouraged, if you feel like you're plugging away at paying off debt and you're not getting anywhere and you see people going on vacations and buying brand new cars and doing all these things, is that you don't know the reality. And if you know that you are working towards doing better, that is what should matter to you, because you can't tell from looking at somebody else's situation if they are making the same progress you are making. So feel good in what you are doing and that you are getting ahead for you. So I feel like I've done a lot of lecturing here today. I'm gonna leave it at that. I will put all kinds of information in the description bar. As always, if you have any comments, please feel free to leave them in the description bar below or in the comment bar below. I answer every question that I get. If you liked this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. It lets me know that people are watching. If you have not subscribed but would like to do so, you can click on my face at the end of this video. You can also go back and watch the MoneyHoney's playlist from the start, and I will put a card up here so you can go and do that. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye!